all going to get in about 10 minutes. So yeah, I need some kind of sticks to keep people awake. I'm really, really pleased to be here. This is a conference that I know our partners and the ISPCC have worked very hard to ensure that we're getting like a really good mix of speakers. I think the speakers, myself accepted, the speakers today, I've been so delighted with and really looking forward to the rest of the afternoon. So I know this morning has very much been focused on very, very practical lessons to be learned and some of the core themes coming out of what we're learning about mentoring and what we're learning about success factors associated with mentoring and some brilliant examples of practice. Tess asked me to focus on the quality word for the next 20 minutes or so and to talk a little bit about, in my view, what the drivers for quality are. So what are the reasons that organisations need to keep focusing on quality and what are the drivers for that? What are we learning about it? Because it's not easy, it's not always easy to get it right. The ISPCC are doing a lot of work and investing a lot of time and effort and energy and money in this, and I think we do a good job, but I think we're still on our way towards it, and I'm sure those of you in the audience who are also working on quality will have a view, and I'd be really pleased in your input. So I want to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about the work that we're doing. So I kind of hate that term, a journey of quality improvement, but we are, that's, I sound like Strictly Come Dancing here, but it is something that we are constantly looking at and constantly challenging ourselves on. So why focus on quality? Well, you've just had lunch, and you wouldn't dream of going to anything or buying any food without thinking, okay, how do I know it's going to be nice? How do I know it's not going to poison me? How do I know it's not going to affect my health? So we kind of take for granted that there are key industries and key sectors where in an instant, if you need to know the standard or if you need to know the quality of something, it's easy to do that. And that's why we look for quality marks, and that's why we also, every year there are brand surveys that tell us what the public likes and doesn't like about the brands that we eat. And apparently in Ireland we love Irish brands, and we disproportionately buy Irish brands over other international brands because we associate them with quality. So that's I suppose what the research tells us. So in terms of services then, and whether it's mentoring, whether it's a whole range of services to children, to families, one of the key focuses for the ISPCC and for charities are how do we then demonstrate to parents, to children, young people, to funders, to the public, what quality is, and that we take quality as seriously in the services that we provide as we do and as we expect in the food that we consume and in all other services that we consume. And one of the drivers, in my view, one of the reasons why this is really important is because, rightly so, there is increasingly a focus on charities. And I use the word charities really broadly here, so you can use that word or use non-governmental organisations or voluntary and community sector, so the kind of the independent sector, for want of a better phrase. And quite rightly, there has been a real focus on the role of charities, the purpose of charities, their function, what it is that we do, but also the quality of what we deliver. And the public are focusing on that a lot. Government is focusing on that. So it's a real driver. And that kind of, to me, that kind of feels like a negative reason to focus on quality, so almost like we're doing it because we have to. But it certainly is one reason, but there are lots of other more positive reasons too. Another reason I think that you see organisations, and particularly charities, focusing on quality is because of the change in how we are funded. And I don't know how many of you work in charities just now? Yeah, seems so hands in the audience. Well, you'll know it because we live it, we breathe it, don't we? We know that when you're an organisation with a social mission, everything that you do is focused on the social outcome that you're delivering. If you work in the private sector, then quite rightly and understandably, your focus is on the commercial outcomes, and usually they're financial outcomes. So charities are facing a whole range of financial pressures, and lots of them are very good and very positive. But one of them for us, for example, is the shift away from cash, from hard cash, to payments, to touch and pay systems, for example. And that is making fundraisers, I don't know if there's any fundraisers in the audience, think, well, if people aren't putting 10 cents and 50 cents in the tins anymore, are they going to be as prepared to give, to swipe their cards? Are they going to be as prepared to give to us? Is it going to mean a change in revenues? That might feel like I've just jumped a million miles away from what you talked about this morning. But actually it makes organisations think if how we are funded is changing, then we need to be much, much better at demonstrating our impact and demonstrating quality, because we need to be able to talk to any member of the public and be able to say, we know we're doing this well, and here's why. We know our services are high quality, and here's why. So I've started with kind of negative drivers, but they're very live and they're very real, and it's important that you know about them. And of course, and quite rightly, and this is key to that, the notion of public trust. And I always say that my organisation, in many ways, we trade on public trust. That might sound like a very corporate or commercial way to talk about it, but we cannot take for granted for a single second that how the public feels about the National Child Protection Charity has a direct impact on the extent to which they want to be involved. So, for example, if the public trusts us, we're much more likely to be able to recruit, attract and retain highly skilled volunteers who give their time towards Childline, for example, who give hours of their life every week towards Childline. But it also will enable the trust to feel that when I give 10 cents to that organisation, I trust them to spend it in the right way. I trust them to spend it on services. I trust them to spend it on overheads, but on good overheads. There's big debate at the moment about good and bad overheads, as you can imagine. But it's important that you understand, from our point of view, public trust, does my money make a difference, is core to how organisations focus on quality. Yes, I have put a Galway jersey in the slide. I wouldn't dream of not doing that, given where we are. But competition, I've been talking for a while about competition in the charity sector, and it's kind of sometimes understood as some kind of, like a dirty word. Should charities be competing against each other? I think we need to be quite honest about the fact that all organisations need to be at their best all of the time if we are providing services to children and young people. And yes, that does sometimes mean having to compare across and between organisations. And I suppose it's being ready for that. And organisations who are able to demonstrate a focus on quality, I think, will be better prepared. Another reason, and this is both a positive and negative reason to be focusing on quality, is security. My organisation, being blunt, it could be and is a target for organisations who might have, for a criminal reason, a reason to be interested in data associated with children. So we know that there are organisations out there, criminal organisations, who need to and want to get their hands on data and children's data, and they want to use that for criminal means. And therefore it's so important that organisations like mine invest their time, their effort, their people, their money on having a really, really good, a really, really secure infrastructure, technology infrastructure. So when we're designing our services, it's not just that we say, okay, how do we make sure that we can deliver positive outcomes for children and young people, but in doing so, there are certain things we must get right. And one of them is we have to make sure that when we're working with a young person and we're capturing their data, which we have to, and I know that came up this morning and it'll come up this afternoon, making sure the more we know about children and young people, the more likely we are to be able to solve and work with them to solve issues. But once we capture data, then we have an obligation and a responsibility to that young person that we do that securely. So all organisations rightly have to be spending a lot of time thinking about what's the right technology we need and how do we ensure we do that securely. But the real reason for me, and in many ways the most important reason for me, that organisations need to be focused on quality is because if we're not doing it, our governance is failing. So if you're somebody who is involved in an organisation, if you are a trustee of an organisation, and if you're not asking, it doesn't matter if you're a trustee or not, if you're working in an organisation that you love or if you fund it, always ask the question, how do we know we're brilliant? And maybe brilliant is too strong a word. Maybe we should be saying, how do we know we're good enough? And I feel very strongly that that's a question every board should be asking all of the time. And it's the job of the board to ask that question, and it's also their job to keep asking the CEO and to give me a really hard time if I'm not giving the right answer. My board does, by the way. But it's really, really important, because if boards aren't asking that question, children don't always ask that question, and it's the job of the board to make sure on behalf of the children that we serve that they're asking that question. How do you know that what you're providing to a child is good enough and is high enough quality? So from my point of view, quality and quality services is about performance, but it's not, in my view, because you have to. It's because you want to. And at the ISPCC, our job is to do it because we want to. I think we will see, and again, rightly so, much, much more focus by the charity regulator in the years to come on quality. At the moment, the charities regulator does not ask, for example, for data on quality, doesn't ask charities to be able to demonstrate outcomes. I'd love to see a time where we have to demonstrate to the charity regulator what our quality outcomes are and demonstrate that in really hard data. I think that would change how we provide services. I think it would do a very good thing. for charities. It would be not easy. It would put us through our paces. But I think that's what good regulation is about. If you haven't had a chance to look at the Benefacts website, so Benefacts is a relatively new organisation, and it is set up to capture data on all charities in Ireland, and it's just launched recently. It's funded by DEEPR, so it's government funded organisation, and they've taken all official data on all charities in Ireland. So anybody who's involved in a charity, they have your data, and they've put it together into one database, and it's available publicly. It's publicly available information. So you can go onto Benefact's website, you can type in ISPCC, you can find out when we last published our annual report, you can find out all about our accounts, you can find out how we're funded, you can find out the proportion of our funding. All of that is really, really important, available information. And then you can type in another charity and you can compare and say, well, actually, have the ISPCC, are they more transparent or less transparent than other charities? And that's very important, that organisations are held to that standard. And I think we'll see more and more in relation to that. And I suppose my final point is one of the reasons we're very excited about quality and excited about talking about quality is because we now, because of our technology capacity as organisations, we're in a position to know so much more about the services that we provide and about the young people who we provide services to, because we have the technology capacity to do it. So I'll give you an example. When I joined the ISPCC, one of the things I was very exercised by was, so I was going out and about as a new CEO does, I was chatting to people and soaking up all this information. And one of my colleagues said, now, I'm not moaning. And she must have said it about 15 times. I said, that's all right, just tell me. And she said, it just feels strange to me that I go from one meeting to the next with a child, and I meet all my clients, and it would be really great if I had better technology to be able to, when I've met that young person, input all I need as simply as possible and do it there and then on the spot, rather than having to go back to the office to do it. And I thought, well, okay, that's fine. And then we looked at ways in which we could do that, and there's lots of reasons why you wouldn't, and can we do it securely, and can we afford it? And we've been both lucky, but we've also been focused on this, and we decided that actually this is an area we should invest in. That first of all, our staff deserve better. They deserve to have access to really good technology and really good secure technology. But also, the young people that we work with deserve their one-to-one child and family support worker to be able to input all of the information they need on a regular basis when they meet the child, and sometimes the young person gets involved in that. And so essentially we're using technology much more effectively. It's taken us 18 months to get there, but we're now in a position whereby we've much richer data, it's more accessible, but most importantly, it's really secure, and we worked with some very good partners to get there. So we're in a position, I think, as organisations, that if we put technology at the heart of our organisations, we can do a lot more, both to measure the quality of our services, to capture data, and to be able to demonstrate outcomes. Our mission at the ISPCC is to make the protection of children everyone's priority. So yes, it is about making it the public's priority, it's about making it government's priority, and it's about making it the priority of every family and household in Ireland. But the reason I put our mission up there is sometimes a focus on quality can just overwhelm a little bit. And for me, it is all-encompassing. It does and should affect every part of the organisation. And this is where I would say we're on a journey. But how I know we'll get there is it will touch every part of our organisation. But when a new staff member joins, when somebody new joins the ISPCC, we're increasingly hearing them say, we hear the word quality a lot. People talk about quality. So, and it's happened and happening in our services, but actually it's now started to trickle into other parts of the organisation. So we started by accepting that good quality and investment in quality is an absolute driver and affects and improves our processes. So we've ended up by saying, what does quality look like? What would quality look like in relation to that service? And we started by looking at our processes. So when we design that service, what processes are currently in place, and how would we change those, and how would we improve those? And once we understood that, and once we started tweaking and tinkering with the process, we started to see much better outputs. So we immediately started to see, for example, in terms of technology, less time spent crunching and inputting data really slowly and in quite a mind-bogglingly boring way, so that staff were just, saying, do I have to do it this way? and we've been able to use technology in a way to improve that. So we've much better outputs. We're able to, as I say, spot trends much more quickly than we were able to do that. We're in the process now of being able to say what impact has that had on outcomes. So we're measuring and being able to demonstrate outcomes and looking at ways in which we want to demonstrate outcomes much more effectively. And I think in the future, once we've done that, we'll be able to show our impact. And when I say demonstrate impact, I mean not just on the child, but actually what's the impact of our mentoring programme been on local communities? What's it been? What's the impact of our mentoring been societally in Ireland? So it should, and we're not there yet, we're at around about the outputs phase, but we should be able to prove and demonstrate much more about why quality is important and why the National Child Protection Charity should focus on that. And just a couple of final points for us. This is, I mentioned our mission, this is our vision and our mission, and we quite rightly are asked, to demonstrate this in our annual accounts and in our annual report. But what was really important to us, to everybody at the ISPCC, was that we didn't just talk about where we want to get to, we didn't just want to talk about our services, but actually there are some key principles that inform all of our work. So every now and then I'll ask my colleagues, do you feel like this? Do you feel this in the organisation? And those principles are, first of all, creating our own future. So as an organisation, having a sense that we're in charge of our own destiny, and whether that's down to the fact that we are overwhelmingly independently funded, so we're 80% independently funded. We don't do anything without listening to children first. So everything that we do has to be informed by the children we listen to through Childline, the children and young people that we work through our child and family services and our mentoring programmes, and our children's advisory committees. So everything that we do is informed in some way by children and young people. And the final one is being committed to quality. So every programme that we introduce, every service that we introduce, and the most recent service that we launched is a service working with children in direct provision in the North East. And when we sat down to design that, we started with what would great outcomes look like, but how will we be able to measure quality? Because it's all very well giving us a warm, fuzzy feeling inside and having people feel like we've done something good. If we're not able to measure that, it's not worth doing. And as we like to say, sometimes it's messy work, but we love doing it, as she likes to show us. And we're, as I say, we've started measuring impacts, and again, this is, those of you who are researchers will know that this is both an art and a science, and we're not there yet. So anybody who wants to help the ISPCC to measure our impacts, we will take all advice that we possibly can. So we measure them using both quantitative data and qualitative data, and why wouldn't we? So the quantitative data kind of speaks for itself. We know, for example, our Childline data will tell us a real rich sense of an amount of information on how children view our service, on whether they like our service. Children are first to tell you when they're not happy. So it's pretty easy to measure the quality of our Childline service, but what does that mean in terms of impact? So qualitative data is very important, and that's why listening to children and being able to capture those quotes, am I all right for time, is really important to us. But last year, 439 children worked on an individual basis with our child and family support workers to build their resilience and support them to cope with situations in their lives. But what's important to us is that we're capturing data through our outcomes measurements. And this is a process whereby when we first meet a child, we immediately spend time with them so that they understand that everything that we do with them is measured so that we can measure outcomes. And we, again, using technology, will sit with that child and we'll ask them to work with us in partnership in doing that. So they're given a laptop, and they spend time in the very early weeks when they're working with us on a one-to-one basis, inputting data about things to do with them. So their likes, their dislikes, what they want from the service. That sometimes will change, so what they think they want on day one might change by week 3, week 4, that's fine. And they measure that over time, so that by the time we finish our period of time with them, we're able to measure their perception of the service, which is their reality, but also we have our own measurements and we're able to compare across those. So we have been able to show that 96% reported being satisfied with the service they receive, 92% of clients' knowledge and understanding of their issue or current issue increased, 73% of clients had changed their behaviours and actions as a result of the intervention. So 73% we're happy with, but we know that's not as high as we want it to be, so we've work to do. And 43% of clients' level of change had a positive community-wide effect. That's really difficult to capture. I'd love to talk to organisations about how they capture the community-wide impact or the local impact of their services, because I think we're getting there, but we've work to do on that. And there's some more data there on Childline, but that's just really about giving you an example of some of the challenges associated with measuring impact and outcomes. And finally, and this is where I suppose I do get a bit chief executive about it, because I think organisations need to spend a lot more time in the early stage of service design, whether it's mentoring or whatever the programme is, standing back and saying, hold on a minute, have we thought enough about quality? Have we thought how we measure quality? Have we thought how we know that what we're doing is first of all worth doing, but also that we can measure and demonstrate that it's had a positive impact? What does it mean? What does it require? Well, it means money. And boards are very exceptionally good at saying all of the right things, but not investing. So it's very important that both boards and senior teams understand that if you're going to do this, you have to do it right, and you have to put your money where your mouth is. So it means commitment from the top, it means trustees giving their time to this, but it also means investing money to back it up. So whether it's if you look at your services and you decide to improve the quality of your services through better technology, it does mean putting your money into that. If it's through better staff, if it's through a fantastic learning and development programme for all of your staff, then it's putting your time, effort and money into that, not doing it on the cheap, because you will not get there. Being clear on what you're trying to achieve. These sound really basic, but I cannot tell you, how many organisations I've seen where it's really clear how they're doing things, but it's not really clear where they're trying to get to and what their underlying purpose is. So clarity on the standards that they will use in terms where the standards that they expect in terms of outputs and outcomes, and also having the nerve to not change your mind over time. And I think that's where having a board that's bold enough to say, we've decided we're doing this over the next 3 years, we're not changing our course too many times in that. So being clear about standards and how you're going to get there. Having a strong sense of the impact you want to achieve, so the result from a changed behaviour. And I think, as I say, my view is we've got some way to go in terms of understanding what the local impact of our work needs to be. Giving staff time to input data. I've mentioned data a lot, but I think you can probably tell that organisations, unless they know what it is they're doing, you're not ever going to be able to measure impacts. So there's, as I say, there's quite a bit to go. But there's nothing worse than the CEO going, it's brilliant, we've just spent a whole load of time and money on technology, so off you go now and input loads of data, without actually saying you're adding seriously to staff time here. And you get a whole load of really disengaged and demoralised colleagues. So what we've had to do, and quite rightly do, is say, how much time is this going to take? How is this going to change people's jobs? And when will it improve? And we actually were talking yesterday about one particular change we're introducing, which we reckon in about 6 months might take a half a day's work from some of our managers, half a day's work a month. So that's worth investing in, because that's a half day those people can now do something else. Changing services so the customer, the client, the family is involved. Again, very easy to say, but not necessarily easy to do, because it changes people's job, it changes how we think about things. But I suppose my final point is you know you're there when quality is properly mainstreamed into the organisation. So it's not, as I say, and I'm sorry I've said this before, it's not just Tess's role. So Tess in the ISPCC is Assistant Director of Quality, and the rule is it's not just Tess's job, it's everyone's job. So it should be everybody in the organisation that knows where we're trying to get to in terms of quality, understands their role, puts up their hand when they're not clear where their role is, but also is prepared and understands that we're there to support them and the organisation will support them in doing it. And that's when you know you've got quality in practice. And the reward is better outcomes for children. That's fundamentally where we want to get to. But I suppose what I wanted to do today was to just give you a little bit of insight into the fact that we don't take for granted that when you say quality, it just happens. There's a lot of, frantic swimming that has to happen, lots of time, effort and energy to get there. But as I say, we know we're there when we can show outcomes for children. Thank you very much indeed.